into the map and get a lot of bounce shots with the axe onto the wall.
Yeah, and you can be oppressive playing in mid, because on Kaboom Canyon, controlling this space in the middle part of the map is so important. That's actually why Gale's been banned, because Gale brings a jump pad in here and basically gives his team default access to that center part of the map without having to play towards the long sidelines to get in there and potentially get trapped. So
unless you're Luminosity and you forget to change gadget.
Yo, that was an absolute man.
that was earlier in the year.
Seeing that Twister thrown down instead was just, that was classic memes. And again, Crow, so powerful because that hypercharge can just get used for safe damage, and it is a disgusting amount of damage that can be done. It also gives you that great all-in potential. Slowing Toxin sets up pick opportunities there as well. But the Colette, such a solid pick here on heist maps. The free safe damage that's virtually unanswerable. It's hard to look past.
Yeah, and there's that really early solid tank counter. I mean, not only do you get this fantastic damage whilst retaining that mid control, but you're also kind of saying to your opposition, hey, you want to bring a tank? Feel free, but like we're going to really give you a tough time with it. I mean, one thing I will say is that Chuck is open here. That's dangerous. It's one of those brawlers which could be that final pick. Obviously, we've seen already how effective Cordelis can be on the defensiveness, or even like a Surge. Actually, it's not the worst of ideas to have, but that's kind of like an answer to idea. So Eclipsar in this kind of position of the draft, they can't necessarily go for it. They might do, but it's definitely open for BC.Gaming here. So a counter for it might not be the worst of ideas.
This Eclipsar comp has been crafted to be pretty oppressive through the middle part of the map. Now, obviously, Amber offers you the ability to clear all of that grass to make it more open, and also Crow's very good at scouting that area anyway, as the ticking poison gives you vision of the target that it's being impacted by. So hard for BC.Gaming to hunker down there behind that sort of fog of war. And there it is,
go for it.
Chuck comes in for Eclipsar, and this prices BC.Gaming into finding a direct answer to this brawler, because right now they don't have one.
They've got to have Colette going on the offensive, as is the Meg, so it's got to be one of those brawlers that can sit back. I would go for personally the Cordelius, but let's see how they feel. I've seen Shelly get some good results. I've seen Surge get some good results.
I've seen people play BB to try and answer this pick.
Yeah, there's a lot of ideas. I think Cordelius is the best because you can just instantly take him into the realm.
If you hit the super.
If you hit the super, if you land a shot.
Unless you do a Grace, then you're having troubles, but yes, obviously taking Chuck immediately into the okay, if Frank gets picked up here. Now, we do have stopping power in the form of that super. We can also sort of, hook the Chuck in a little bit with that gadget. It's an interesting answer. I don't know if it's designed to deal with the Chuck threat exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Frank paired with the Cordelius pick earlier with STM and EU. But the Frank is not necessarily going to do a better job than Cordelius, in my opinion. It's definitely one, though, that is going to lend itself a hand going on the aggressive. And again, against the Chuck, your best bet is to go on the aggressive. It's going to be a base racing, which you're not going to win. Yeah. You've got to double down and just brute force the situation. So I think that could be where BC.Gaming are coming from here.
That might mean that BC have to win a 2 versus 3, though, at some point here if they're going to answer the Chuck. Megan moves up already, so good pressure being generated by this Meg in the side lane, and ECP don't feel like they can afford to dedicate too many resources to answering this, so it's free safe damage.
Yeah, ECP on the back lines here, defending the situation, because the Chuck's trying to get himself worked up to be able to do something. Great smash from Geki, already on the safe, and ECP are all over the place, honestly.
Geki is dirty. First gets rid of the Chuck, then finds a super stun that also breaks open the wall. The Eclipsar need to sort themselves out here. Megu is just having his absolute way with that safe here. Sargo and Geki at least can group up now. Map gets opened up. Gugu trying to circumvent the threat of the Frank, and eventually he'll be ignored. There's only 20% that needs to be taken care of, and Megu comes out with a super swing to deal with the Chuck. And now the claws start to close around Eclipsar's throat. 13% and counting.
This should be it from Geki. Nicely done. A fantastic hypercharge to really close the gap and gets the first game in the pockets. This is exactly what you've got to do. I really like to see the ideas of which we're kind of working with their draft, to see those come to fruition here. And, that was the way to play it. Now, Eclipsar have got to respond to this idea. They've got to be a much better, solid defense. They can't leave that Meg on that bottom left-hand side with the Crow. That's not going to work for them.
So what now that your opponent has decided they're comfortable racing you, and that your Chuck on his own is not enough to keep up in that kind of battle? Geki already pushing so aggressively, actually denying Mebius the ability to impact the middle of the map. Geki says, okay, damage me, hit me hard. And then he can throw down a lot of those fast hits on the safe. And who answers Megu? Mebius can't fight that Meg.
I think they've got to be a bit more cautious on the side of ECP to get these early defenses in. Maybe this is going to be fed nicely into his hypercharge, but you've got to get that to the other side of the field. And look at that damage already. There's only 60% and climbing now left on the ECP safe.
Okay, good damage though, at least being done by the Chuck here. So Gugu is able to even the ledger a little bit. But I mean, look, the controller's been lost. Geki pressuring down again. Gugu has to try and keep up, but my goodness, Eclipsar got knocked the heck out. That was quick.
Ridiculous. I mean, that was a steamroll. ECP at the moment, just absolutely with egg on their face. They've come in so cold to this matchup, and you really can't do that. They had to make an adaptation going into that second game. They didn't. They kind of left the same things open with that crow pick on the left-hand side. I mean, they swapped the Meg into the Frank, which is effectively the same thing. I mean, you're still going to be forced up against. Mavis can't really do much, and if he gets high overcharged off the back of his interactions, he's got to get to the other side of the field, which requires control. It requires retaking your position, and none of that happened, and as quickly as that, that's a set.
That draft was not good enough from Eclipsar. How do you answer? It's one thing to try and answer a Meg, but you have to now answer Meg and Frank with Crow and Amber and a Chuck who most of the time isn't playing defensively, can't afford to play defensively. That's brutal stuff. And you also, by the way, get the tank pick taken away from you. The Colette is already snatched up at the start of the draft. That should have been a clear telegraph that BC...
HP. I mean, look at the actual DPS on OPE there. 428.
Right.
It's really, really commendable. But it doesn't matter. In Heist, it's all about the objective. When you got a Frank and a Meg coming at you and a Colette that's able to get the damage from the mid and keep the control there, ECP just didn't have the strategy. BC.Gaming did.
Eclipsar are supposed to contain BC.Gaming, right? Either on their own half defensively or in the middle part of the map. But straight off the break, we saw BC.Gaming just walk up on them. They just walked through the grassy area, made their way through the chokes because they have these massive health pools, really not bothered. Like, what? Crow is not designed to deal with tanks. He doesn't answer them. He can slow them down if he has the gadget, but you only have 3 of those to use. And all-inning one of those tanks, like a Frank, for example, will probably get you stunned and instantly eliminated. So who else? Okay, Amber. She really requires tanks, though, to be just walking in a straight line at you or contained in a certain part of the map. They couldn't do that. The tanks were able to strafe because they've pushed into Eclipsar territory. The draft is not even the biggest issue for me here, but it's pretty clear to see they weren't ready for a double tank pick.
Yeah, and the Chuck requires time to set up. You know, you can't just go and instantly start getting some safe damage and apply the pressure. So they should have been a bit more cautious towards that, maybe play a harder defensive game at the beginning, just to lock things down, and then maybe work their way around BC.Gaming's strategy, but it just wasn't enough. And I mean, this is the best of 3. We've just had a set which went by in the blink of an eye, and for ECP now, they've really got to have some harsh words behind the scenes to recollect themselves and make sure this next draft is a winning one.
I mean, how long do we spend talking about momentum and a team like Eclipsar really maybe benefiting from that, but also it being a sword that cuts both ways? They have to recover and bounce back from this first map, and this is not the first time that an APAC team has just taken away the first set in a series. We've seen it all throughout the day. We saw, obviously, STM and EU have to recover from that. Luminosity attempt to recover from that, right? And to fight their way back against Connections, ended up being able to take that series. But it's also worth mentioning that BC.Gaming are a team that have been going up against rival esports, Crazy Raccoon, every single month. Every month. They've been going up against these top teams, and that's why they've been getting knocked out in quarters and semis. They come from an incredibly competitive region also. So while we spend so much time talking up like how, you know, EMEA as a region has risen, you know, just the quality at the top here in APAC has meant that BC.Gaming have been honing their edge against the very best.
Yeah, and for me, I still have Eclipsar Esport down as being the #1 for this group.
Okay.
I have BC.Gaming down to being the #2. But if this continues and we don't see any adaptations or any ability to work around this situation on the side of ECP, we could be looking, it's still early days, don't get me wrong, I'm getting ahead of myself somewhat, but BC.Gaming, if they are able to claim a #1 seed here, I mean, that would be immense going into a day 2 scenario. I mean, for Eclipsar Esport, they've got a great wealth of experience on their side. Certainly OPE, especially when you look back to that storyline last year with Esports and SK Gaming. Like, this is a player that knows how to handle that kind of pressure and scrutiny.
We should, yeah.
There's not much time to do so now in this best of 3.
Yeah, they've got to get it right in this next set here. Otherwise, all the King's Horses won't be able to save them in this series. Again, a loss here, though. It's not over for Eclipsar Esport. Obviously, there are 3 teams in this group, but a whole lot hinges on just what kind of quality Team Queso are bringing here.
Yeah.
A team, you know, from I'd say a less represented team from a region that maybe gets a little bit less of the spotlight. That Team Queso team have, you know, made semis like for 4 months, you know, out of the 5. So we are talking about a team that consistently has a really high level. You know, whereas we talked a lot about Eclipsar, right? They made finals. They made a finals in May. That last sort of hurdle that they weren't able to cross, and since then, have left a little bit to be desired here. So they're definitely a team with question marks over them. BC.Gaming, man, look comfortable. I'm not going to lie.
They're so looking solid. I mean, statistically, though, as well, these teams are identical, honestly. I mean, like, both teams had 3 quarterfinals exits. You know, both teams had that grand finals appearance, but no grand final win. But BC Gaming, you've got 24% set percentage, like, only.
Yeah.
That's the bottom of
They get blown out a lot.
Yeah, they've had a really tough, rough year. Eclipsar are much better by 38%, mind you. But at the moment, this new draft coming for Out in the Open. Knockout, of course, that game mode that we all know and love, that can be very, very difficult to take back control on a map like this. The bans being the Max, the Buster, and the Frank, the first pick Byron. On the side of BC Gaming, Angelo, Piper, and Gene are the bans.
You can see here at Eclipsar don't want to play to like a late game state where the Buster can sort of turtle up, build that super, and then sort of fight when the gas closes in. And they want to play something that's longer range and gives them more pressure earlier in these rounds. BC Gaming, though, the Brock's been great here. We saw it picked up by Connections in a double sharpshooter composition. I think they paired it with a Mandy. It looked great. So really can't argue with that. You have the ability, of course, you know, to open up the map a little bit with that gadget. And of course, those incendiary fields left are very good zoning tools. We'll see what BC Gaming want to mix it with, because they actually have gotten rid of a lot of the sharpshooters, right? Angelo and Piper are already off the table.
Kit is open here, by the way.
Good lord. Okay. Oh yeah, actually, Kit Byron with
Byron with something could be disgusting.
With like a Meg would have been good there. We've seen it with, my God, we've seen it with some nasty tanks combined in the past.
Yeah.
That comp is open. I don't know how much. Do we see that much in EMEA? We get it in NA. It's very cheesy.
Yeah, I mean, certainly EMEA are very hot on what Kit can achieve, and it could be that final pick. I wouldn't necessarily go with it now. I'd go with what it's going to kind of latch onto, which, I mean, it's kind of interesting to ban the Buster and the Frank here, because that could be a perfect pairing for a Kit. But the Buster ban is so underrated. Buster here, honestly, can just cause such a problem. It's going to be Pearl. This could be a Kit coming in as the third and final pick, unless we see, well...
I've seen Draco Kit a little bit in NA with Byron.
Yeah.
Times that like obviously is a comp that really does do well with a, but sometimes we've seen it like mixed in a little bit on some maps with like a Sprout to close up some of the sight lines to answer like the counter pressure of like, you know, sharpshooters. Pearl, though, again, starting to come back into the metagame a little bit. Really very good, of course, towards those late rounds, and a Gus here. So you have a lot of healing, a lot of durability here, of course, as the Pearl boasts a lot of that herself.
I'm surprised, but Gus is very underrated, by the way. And this is my favorite map for Pearl in the game. Like, when I'm playing Power League, this is my go-to brawler to have Out in the Open, because the gadget is just so good at just burning down your opposition when you've got that whole, like, pressure cooker cooked up. You can really just get a very quick early kill. And certainly the Bell makes a lot of sense to pair with the Meg. I don't necessarily mind it. And obviously, you know, to be able to really target onto that Pearl, land that mark, and then have those shots ricochet between the opposition. But the Gus here, you know, I always forget, actually, the Gus is not in a bad spot. Like, it's one of those things that's very easy when you're playing the game to forget that, because Gus is not a shiny, spectacular brawler. But those shots really do pack a punch now.
And I will say that Pearl does need to get a little closer to guarantee that damage. You know, you do want to use that gadget, get that extra 25%. You have a lot of dispersion on your shots, so you need to take risks, and obviously the Gus shield makes that much safer. The map's starting to get broken up a little bit already, and obviously Kooky Pop are great for securing some of those, you know, eliminations if you can chunk someone down low enough. But I like the Bell. Once you get map control and those nest eggs come down, they can almost guarantee eliminations.
Well, ECP already pushed back very early on here, and it's very tough to get out of that position. Mavis, of course, has the heals to maybe help Gugu get out here if he's scrutinized along the way. Yet just balancing his time between those shots. Not going to find too much of a connection onto the block with that gadget, but nonetheless, it is forcing back BC Gaming somewhat. Geki here taking a lot of damage. It's going to be actually forced out of mech now as well, and that's not a great time for it.
Geki obviously can get back in mech, but in the meantime, they're really vulnerable here, and Gugu wants to put some pressure down. That is going to be the Meg taken off the table. Megu, though, able to clean up Mebius, so that healer now absent for Eclipsar, but they do have the durability offered by that Ope Super, and Gugu is going to be looking scarier as that heat starts to rise.
Megu getting a few taps. OP is in a very precarious position here. Just going to survive on, though, with the help of Gugu. They will secure the round early on. Very back and forth. BC Gaming had a good early game, but ECP able just to turn it back into their favor towards the end.
Yeah, really resilient comp. Have the shielding from the Gus and that constant healing. And obviously, the super from Byron is huge to turn fights around. Can really help you chunk down a Meg, for example. Geki needs to stay in Meg for as long as possible.
Byron's so good in this current meta as well. Often forgotten about, but it is so good to be a first brawler pick here. And maybe it's then finding as well Megu there. the hypercharge is then available on that Brock, and that's what's going to keep Mavis and OP just kind of back for now, honestly. And if he connects with it, it's going to be devastating as well on the side of ECP. He's thinking about it now, just flashing it just to keep everything back.
Great pressure!
Takedown as well.
2 shots go into Ope. They both bounce into the teammate. So the Byron goes down first yet again. And Geki says, I'm happy to give up my mech here. I've turned it into extreme map control. And BC.Gaming able to fight back in this first round.
This is now a very crucial round. I mean, this could be ECP looking at, looking against the barrel of a match point scenario. Let's see how they fare. A lot of bell shots here ricocheting between Mavis and Gugu. They're not really separating themselves either. They should be a bit more cautious, get that healing process back, into a better place faster here. And Sago as well, with that hypercharge available to him and the super, he probably has to get a guaranteed mark onto Gugu here, which might help alleviate some of the situation here. But so far, a bit back and forth, but no one's making the first move.
I mean, the mark never drops off, so Gugu may as well be a 5,000 health brawler as opposed to a 7,800 health brawler once they're hit by that mark. And as you mentioned, the hypercharge from Bell guarantees the connection virtually. Gugu a little bit low. Map getting opened up here means it's a little bit scary for Pearl to try to shoot in this position. Hypercharges, my goodness, we're going for it. Maybe he's hit with the mark, taken out instantly, and Ope, even with the shield, will die out of the rocket rain. That is going to be that. BC.Gaming take away the first game in this set. I can't believe we are already staring down on Eclipsar loss potentially here.
Can we bring this back around as well to that interview in BCEN where we were asking BC.Gaming, how where do you kind of see yourselves in the competition?
Worst team.
They said, we are the worst team here and we're not being humble.
Maybe they just are. Maybe they just were. But I think it's also hard to get a measure of yourself until you can actually start to throw down with some of these teams and scrim them. But we're going to be jumping into here the second game, of course, a knockout on Eclipsar. They're on the precipice of taking an L.
This is not what I expected. Gugu now receiving the heals from Mabius as the battle shots ricochet quite heavily between themselves and already find themselves on this back line. Gugu just going to keep that pressure cooker hot, but needs to get into a more aggressive position to do so.
Reverse polarity here for the Bell, so Sago can obviously punish. If Eclipsar give that map control, you can get those bouncing shots as well.
It's been one of those mechanics which we saw last year at LCQ as well. I think from memory it was Chaos that just got some incredible value early on for SK Gaming, but now Geki as well in his back left hand side might be forced out of mech here as well. Sago coming with some good shots, keeping then Gugu suppressed and OPE, and maybe it's just trying to find some shots. Might even get the right hand side takedown here on Mega, and he does!
Mega falling here, Sago now under a little bit more pressure and still no mech yet for Geki, just now regained. But Geki is quite low. And Gather from Gugu is dangerous, and the super of the Pearl, of course, means that closing the gap could be a problem. Ope getting hammered, though. Absolutely chunked down as Geki descends, and Gugu tries to help bail them out, but Sago's going to be there. What a comeback from BC.Gaming, who start at a player disadvantage.
Unbelievable. BC.Gaming are doing it, and Eclipsar Esport have got to bring something more to the table, because one round and this one could be over in this group. Obviously, ECP not out of the conversation for later on against Team Queso, but this is not what I was expecting to see, quite honestly. And BC.Gaming have just been pinpoint accurate so far.
Hypercharged up here for Sago. That's dangerous, and Ope gets him with a mark instantly. That won't go away. One more shot from Bell would have ended him, and Mebius has to quickly turn around and top the Gus back up. Geki might have overextended into some serious pressure now that Gugu has virtually a 10,000 HP. This time, though, Geki respects it and backs up.
Yes, Sago with some
into a corner.
Shots all this left on the side of the door. Geki, you managed to find the kill as well. It's now a 2 versus 1. It's going to be OPE against Geki. He's looking to trying to find a takedown, but it's not. It's done. BC.Gaming take it.
ECP come into this game with high expectations, even for a lowest seeded team from their region. BC.Gaming don't give a damn. They walk up. That first set is over in the blink of an eye. In the second, they have a great double sharpshooter draft with the Bell, and they get a ton of value out of that Meg playing solo on the left side of the map. That is a devastating blow for Eclipsar, and